Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Loft again. Normal chaos, normal mess, but stuff is changing. Better. Welcome to a Saturday afternoon in, I won't say chilly Cornwall, but it's not too, yeah, where you guys are. And I have coffee, computers, and I have me. Basics. Just a catch up. Hello. Sorry I didn't get a chance to stream last weekend. Been a bit busy. Things are a bit manic at the moment. And I just thought I would go through and catch up with a few reference. What's been going on? Afternoon, Rich. Welcome, welcome. Obviously, my main focus for the last couple of weeks has been on what's going on at Rackspace. Good old Rack. And the fact that we are now over 2 weeks on from them getting hacked, and without trying to land myself in any trouble, nothing has happened. They have achieved nothing. They have said nothing, pretty much. They have said only what the PR team basically said to say. And from what our clients have said, they aren't replying to tickets asking for information because they don't have any. They aren't replying to tickets in a speedy manner, which they claim. So I thought we'd run through that for a little bit of fun. Yeah, just started. So yes, much fun and games, all chaos, and yeah, much joy. So let's just click over. Start. Where's it gone? Find the right page I need to get to. It's here somewhere. Okay, so I was grabbing all the ready. The one interesting thing, hack, is basically how quickly the tech media shut up about it. It's gone quiet. It's gone dead. This is the interesting part on this. So I'm not saying that they have, but it would not surprise me if someone from Rackspace has leaned on contacts to say, please don't broadcast anything about this, because Rackspace's share price has plummeted and has been plummeting for a long time. The claims of fanatical support seem to be a bygone era. So yes, there does seem to be. Find it. Where? Was page that I second. Um, but basic. Uh, ooh. Check LinkedIn. Let's check LinkedIn. I think Tom Lawrence posted that. Bruce Tom's page. If you're not following Tom on LinkedIn, I see you. But yeah, I do find it very interesting. The whole world has kind of brushed this one under the carpet when actually it's pretty serious. So yeah, I think someone somewhere has been leaning on the tech press don't publish anything about this quiet, because they know they're in deep doo doo. Oh, come on, where's my Google Foo is failing me today. That one there. That's the... So let's. This has probably got the most information page on what's been going on with Rackspace, or happened, as it went. Rackspace Cloud suffers active security breach. A bit of an understatement. So going through, basically, and then someone investigated Godan as versions were, and obviously, it was that showing that versions, I think, 2 versions out of date, missing a 0-day patch for one of the 0-day proxy shell exploits. I have also seen commented, I believe, on one of my TikToks that somewhere, or maybe on Twitter, that somewhere in their deep in their stack is an Exchange 2010 server as well, which got compromised. So that will be an interest. Going to be interesting because at the moment they've got CrowdStrike investigating this and have been for over a week. And it will be interesting to see what they let CrowdStrike publish on this hack, if anything, because obviously they are going to be getting pressure from the shareholders saying nothing about this to try and sweep it under the carpet, to try and get some buoyancy, rebound back on the stocks. And they're also going to try and want to retain their customer base, which, going on this, they shouldn't. Anyway, so you can see here, basically, the version that they were running was August 2022, August 9th, 2020, security update, cumulative update 23, security update for August. And they were on 0.40, and we've had 0.42 and 0.44, which I believe 0.44 fixed this day, which could be exploited in the wild. And 2 and 2 quite often makes 4. Chances are that's what got exploited. And they say proxy not shell. So, as named by Kevin Beaumont. So, this. But yes, as it currently stands, well, this is the thing. Exchange 2010 in the middle of a 2013 stack. The fact is they were running 2013, and they obviously left it there because from a business sense, I can understand. It's still a supported product. It's still receiving patches. 2010 isn't. But then what has probably happened here is there's been obviously 2 security cumulative updates for Exchange. And whoever at Rackspace that was in charge of ensuring the environment was patched and up to date has either been told, "Oh no, you can't patch it at the moment," or we can't afford to patch it, so to speak, time and etc. So there's either not been enough people, or it's just been missed. In which case, I would suspect there's going to be some heads rolling there. The CISO's head should be on the chopping block for this, because as much as Rackspace love to try and downplay this, and if we look at their lovely service status that looks like it was written in the early 90s, every single time it's basically saying this is what we did to stop it going any further, but that's it. And basically all they did was turn the environment off. So they obviously caught the fact that the system was not happy or there was something going on. probably due to the fact that servers started dropping offline, and database stores started dropping off. Now, the issue is going to be if the databases were being encrypted and they stopped it halfway through, they're going to end up with a ton of half encrypted databases which produce garbage. But the most critical aspect of this, and the one they refuse to answer, even though they've been asked hundreds of times on this, where are the backups? There are none, as far as we can tell. Now, very valid point that was presented was, well, obviously they need time to investigate. They can't just restore in case the actor was already in the system. Very correct. Very true. But at the same time, they can restore into an isolated environment and start exporting data. When all the data can be exported at that point, they can literally run a PowerShell script and pull every single mailbox out of the environment into a PST. That way they have all the data, and then when someone raises a support ticket saying, can I have my data, present them with a PST file to download, and they get their data. Currently, they can't do that. Now, if they had a good 3-2-1 backup system, number one, that shouldn't be a problem. Number two, they should be able to go back at least 30 days, if not further, and identify, at least recover some data. But currently, they can't. They are keeping deadly silent on this, purely and simply because I suspect they don't have anything. They have no backups of this environment at all, because what they've relied on is Exchange to do the work for them. They've relied on database access groups, so their backup effectively has been that they make sure they have a clone of the entire database in another database access group in Exchange, and if you put the right level of retention around it, obviously back. So that would be my guess as to what has happened here. They've been caught napping on this. Maybe they took backups of the system periodically, but that's about it. It's going to be a difficult recover from. I don't think they ever will. I think the clients we've picked up, and I'm sure many other IT firms have picked up clients. I'm sure there are, unfortunately, many IT companies, MSPs out there that are practically begging clients to stay with them because they will have placed them on this system, because said very, very many times, hosted Exchange is the cheaper alternative. And if you can say to someone when you've got Exchange but you don't need to pay 365 prices, they're going to go, oh, that sounds good, without realizing that, as I've said before, and is reiterated by a lot of people now in tech, Exchange is a ticking time bomb. At some point, the amount of 0 days that are found over and over and over again with it, it's going to go wrong. And it's going to cause chaos like this. So Exchange will fail at some point. It was a great system. It still is when combined with the right levels of security in front of it. But that's about it. This is one of the big differences that people fail to grasp when they're doing the. We still see it. You still see people going, I can do it cheaper than Microsoft 365. And the argument will always be, oh, it's cheaper because I buy one server and I buy the cows and I host and manage the Exchange environment. And yes, just to host Exchange, to run an Exchange environment can be cost-wise cheaper, but it's not the same. It's apples and oranges comparison. Microsoft 365 is not just one product. So many products. What people fail to realize, they always see it as, oh, it's just hosted Exchange or it's just hosted SharePoint, when it's not. It's the same with any environment like that, whether you use 365, whether you use G Suite. The product is the whole package, not one aspect of it. So yes, there's quite a few things that people are realizing out of this. But the big one is from Rackspace's side is they've decided that, in no uncertain terms, to move all these clients over to 365, which says to me that they're not expecting to move them back. It's a very easy out for Rackspace, because all they do is say, oh, all they've done now is go, we've had a disaster, quick, move them onto a different platform. that's better than our platform, and we won't move them back because then we don't have to bother bringing the old platform back up if we can't restore it. We'll just migrate everybody off of it. Now, what they keep saying over and over again is they keep reiterating, we're making all these resources available, but they're not replying to tickets. Call times are still high. So if you're a Rackspace user, it genuinely is time to get off their platform. Maybe Rackspace can pull something out of this if they come out with a security report and detail everything that went wrong and admit they've gone wrong, admit their basic thing is, this is all PR driven. And the irony is we've taken on some PR companies that have fallen foul of Rackspace. And the first thing they've said to us is, yeah, their PR team at Rackspace is working overtime to try and mitigate this disaster. The other thing they've made is a nice pretty page say about the hosted security incident. This should just be, we got hacked. Sorry. This is quite simple, Rackspace. We got hacked. We are sorry. We dropped the ball. You get this whole, look, we're working as best as we can. Oh, aren't we great? Aren't we magnificent? Look, we're doing all this work to get you back up and running. Frequently asked questions. Question number 1, how did this happen? This was a ransomware attack. Come on. Seriously, Rackspace. That is the most bullshit answer. How did this happen? Right. What happened was we failed to patch our systems. Someone exploited a 0-day attack on our system and managed to encrypt all our systems. We did not have any backup, so we could not roll the system back. That would be probably a more genuine answer, but it's not. So, what steps did we take to isolate this? Well, as soon as we discovered suspicious activity, our team, in line with incident response plans, took swift action to disconnect its network. We turned it off, is the short answer to that one. We went in and we turned off our servers because we did not know what to do because the environment was being encrypted. We also engaged industry-leading global security firm CrowdStrike, who has confirmed the incident was quickly contained. Well, of course it was quickly contained, because someone went in and went off. No shit, Sherlock. And limited solely to the hosted Exchange email environment. Well, I'd be even more concerned if your hosted Exchange email environment was linked to any of your other systems. If it was, my God, you would have been in for a world of hurt, and I would have, unfortunately, laughed all the way to the law courts for their clients because they will grind them into the dust. Out of abundance for caution, we have put additional security measures in place and will continue to actively monitor for any activity. So what they're actually saying is, out of abundance, we patched our systems because we realized we fucked up. We upgraded the security to where it should have been already before this happened. And we're now looking at this as, whoops, how can we deal with this disaster? How are you helping customers on the hosted exchange? We are actively transitioning the affected customers to the more modern Microsoft Office 365. Wrong. Microsoft 365. It's not Microsoft Office, it's Microsoft 365. Get it right, Rackspace. You're a Microsoft partner after all. Hopefully you won't be after this. But with many having already successfully completed the migration. Yes, we've moved quite a few mailboxes off of you onto Microsoft 365, but not using your platform, so to speak. We use Microsoft's, and we license it proper means, not giving everybody a Plan 1 license. Rackspace is making all of our available internal and considerable external resources available to provide support to the remaining hosted exchange, including additional search staff and a Microsoft Fast Track team who has been deployed to supplement the Rackspace workforce. I've dealt with the Microsoft Fast Track team. They're interesting to work with because they treat everybody as if they are humongous. So, yeah. maybe Rackspace, you should have actually gone out to, probably I would have gone out to your MSP partners that you've got on board and said, help, we will pay you, help. Because they will understand the client base better. They will understand the users better. And what they will probably say is, we're not helping you. You've just cost us hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds in lost business. Oh. Was this ransomware? Well, you've already confirmed that. Yes, we have also notified the FBI and continue to support their investigations. How confident are you that the attackers have no way back into your system? As soon as we discovered the blah, 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 we pulled the plug on the environment and the environment's offline, basically. And then we turned off all the features and like we should have done months ago. When will the investigation be complete? They don't know because basically they probably have no access to half the system. So they're having to tear into it. And they're probably also dealing with the fact that any smart attacker, this will either have been done as a joke by somebody. I mean, that will be the worst thing, is if this is done by, like has happened in the past, a couple of lads in their bedroom who found a way in and have gone, ha ha ha, we can encrypt all these exchange servers for a laugh. So they did. And they probably didn't even put a recovery key or anything like that. It's probably gone. Are all customers impacted? No, this incident was quickly contained and limited solely to the hosted Exchange email environment. Are all hosted Exchange environment customers impacted? Yes. Yes, they are. Simple answer to that. Has any customer data been impacted? Yes. Until you can prove otherwise, Rackspace, yes. All your customer data has been impacted for anyone using the hosted Exchange platform. You now have to assume that all that data is lost, potentially stolen, and potentially now in the hands of third parties. You can't assume otherwise, unfortunately. You need to go away, prepare for utterly thorough investigations from the EU Commission on GDPR, because you are now technically in a GDPR breach. Any client in the EU or the UK who used Rackspace hosted Exchange now needs to go away and investigate what data would be held within their Exchange environment. And if any of that falls under GDPR, they now need to either log an incident in the UK with the Information Commissioner's Office, so the ICO, or the European equivalent, so the EU equivalent. So get them on the ball now. I hope they already are. But yes, anything that has been or will ever be dealt with in this environment is now considered lost data until they prove otherwise. And even if they prove otherwise, assume it's still lost. Because as it stands, if the environment had been accessed by a third party, potentially they could have copied anything out of that environment before ransomwaring it. They could have done anything. So be aware. Be very aware on that. How do I get technical support? Phone up a local, good, managed service provider, get in touch with your IT provider, and ask them to move away from Rackspace. Any good local IT provider, any good local service will assist. Get your data out of Rackspace. Get everything you've got out of Rackspace. As it currently stands, the service they have provided is now unfit for purpose. And then get the legal boys on the case. There are multiple class actions running at the moment. Investigate. Quick search on Google will reveal what's available, what ones are running. Have a look around on Reddit, etc. Find a class action, join into it, and basically, it's time to make Rackspace pay properly for their lack of security. So, ironically, and unfortunately, Barracuda really do need to be, in one way, kind of praised for this, but in another way, they do need to cop some responsibility, sadly, Barracuda. And I do like the guys at Barracuda. We've used them in the past, and they have been very good. But it would appear this environment used Barracuda to archive emails off. So anyone who paid Rackspace, the archive service, you can recover any emails out of the archive because the Barracuda system obviously was unimpacted. Separate system runs on its platform. So it was effectively able to mitigate the issue. But at the same time, if Barracuda were backing up a ginormous hosted platform, I do hope their sales team and their tech team have been recommending they back the system up as well. Because if Barracuda have been recommending they back up and it's not been working or anything like that, they stand a risk of copying this as well. Hope not, because as I say, I do like the guys at Barracuda and they've provided some very good services over. And they still do. So hopefully, for some clients, if you have the archive functionality, you can pull back data that's over 2 years old. And hopefully, maybe if you've got a year on your machine or a year or 2 years maybe in your Outlook, your data loss will be minimal from a historic point of view, but you still have to assume that that data is now in the wild if it main mailbox. So again, be aware. Do I still have access to my email archive? Yes, you do, but no, you don't. Because basically, what they need to export them all to PSTs again and get them back to you. I'm having a technical issue. Blah blah blah. Yeah. As soon as blah blah, basically, that's the norm of users going. Since this happened, this has. So, how long should I expect to use Microsoft 365? Expect to use it from now onwards. Expect to use it instead of this platform, or until you either decide to migrate to another provider and license your via them, or if you choose to switch to another hosted Exchange environment, which I advise against, or if you choose to migrate to G Suite, which isn't our preference, but if that's what you feel suits your business better, then you are free to do that. I would suggest staying with 365, but G Suite is still a perfectly viable package. There we go. How do I get technical support as a non-hosted? Well, you sit in the queue. Now, are you? This is the all updates can. Are you planning to update non-impacted customers as you learn more? All updates can be found on our service station. Which, yeah, the one thing they haven't mentioned a single line of in here in frequently asked questions, which is the most frequently asked question: where are the backups? Not a point in, not even a single line on it. So yes, latest update is this bullshit. More PR bullshit is basics of it. I'm not going to words on this because it is. This is what happens when you have a large company that has been caught napping, caught with their pants down, and they're now having to deal with it. They're now having to deal with the fact they cannot address what's going on. They don't know what's going on, in all honesty. They are stuck because they're sat waiting effectively for a third party to come back with a security report. Yeah, until such time as they actually pull their finger out their ass and admit we did wrong, sorry, until someone comes on and says, we did wrong, we got it wrong, we screwed up, we failed to patch our system, Rackspace are basically just trying to ask cover now. They are literally on a full-on panic. We're going to lose a lot of money over this. We're going to lose a lot of clients over it. And I don't blame them. The more they lose, the better. It's that sort of thing. So, yes. So this is the latest on Rackspace. If you follow me on TikTok and you obviously here on YouTube, I do try and update shorts every couple of days. If anything new and interesting comes along, but I thought I'd do effectively an end of week roundup. See, yes, this is where we are with this environment. There's still very little in press from this. And again, there's not much going on, but there should have been more pressure being put on. There should be more pressure being put on apology, because from what I have read, from what I have seen, clients have lost thousands, thousands and thousands, and I would be holding Rackspace liable for every penny. Every penny. Their lack of due care has basically cost people business, and that's the way of it. It's going to be interesting to yeah, interesting to read any service level agreements around this environment, because if there's a service level agreement claiming anything like 99.9% uptime, that's gone. So that's for one of the other avenues for compensation. Even though they've moved people over to 365, they basically, for every day that the system is down, they should be able to demand compensation. That's the basics of it. If you are paying for a system and you're not getting the system you pay for, they're providing you an alternative, but it's not the same system. You don't have access to your data, have access to historic data. If you are one of the lucky people that was running Outlook locally, obviously exporting to a PST is the first thing we've been doing with clients. Anyone who was on this environment come to us. First thing you have to do is export the email they've got, ensure that you've made sure that is safe, and then you go from there. Then you start to deal with the migration. Then you make sure that you move the domains into a better environment. You want to be moving everything. Hey ho, all good fun. So that's that, as they say, is Rackspace. Sums them up quite nicely. I'm actually, I'll say, when I started up in business 10+ years ago, I did look at joining up with Rackspace as a partner and using them for things. And at the time, I had reservations about them. There was good, there was bad aspects to them. But I'm kind of glad I didn't now, because we would have had to probably deal with some of our own clients in an environment like this. But I made the decision back then to stick purely to Microsoft 365, and I moved many of my clients onto it as I could, away from on-prem Exchange service. And I'm glad I did, because they are an absolute nightmare to manage properly. Anyone claiming to be able to manage, maintain, and match service level you get with 365 on an on-prem server just really doesn't grasp what Microsoft is. All good fun. Not sure what local count. It's it's one of those funny things that when you again it's like GoDaddy and 365. Unfortunately, when they get their claws into you, they try and keep hold of you to the point of they try and sell you their version of a package, and their version it's weird. It's one of the, like, it's like we could have partnered up with GoDaddy, but no, we'll partner with Microsoft, what we are. But at the same time, like the GoDaddy version of 365, it's like, why are you hiding aspects? Why do they hide bits away? And it would not surprise me if Rackspace do the same with their 365, or they would have tried to do it. Yeah, it's very, very telling that it's taken this long for them to even like fire up a web page. First thing they should have done is fire up a web page with a daily, this is what's going on, this is where we are in this. If they are dedicating that much resource, oh, that's my internet. Yeah, if they're dedicating that much resource to this, they can dedicate some resource to the community. They can dedicate some resource to updating people what's going on. which they're not doing. They are basically dealing. The PR team is probably in meltdown. The board will be going absolutely stir crazy. I mean, let's have a laugh, shall we? Let's see what the share price. Oh, it went up a tiny bit. Let's have a look. So over the last year, again, we've gone from a high of $14. We'll go with the last month. Oh, look, right. And the hack happened, got announced there, and yeah, on its way down even further. In fact, we got, yeah, you can see basically someone somewhere looks like they were getting out. So, yeah, they are, they're tumbling. They are quite literally tumbling now. So someone managed to prop up the price a bit, but again, they're in a market that is saturated. Is the other issue now? They are in a market that the big boys own now. As much as there is a as much as there is a thought pattern that says I've got my shouting at me going, what's going on? What is going on here? Am I streaming okay? It says I am. Right, the YouTube app is saying that I'm not. But hopefully I'm coming through to you guys okay. Yeah, as much as there is a place in this world for data centers and for colo and for hosted environments, on the flip side of that, there is also an issue in that Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, obviously in the Far East, Baidu, all things like that. Yeah, it's probably my mic. I'll move it a bit. I still need to get up here set up better, so I'm still working on that. But that requires money, and I don't have any at the moment because it's Christmas. Yeah, it's probably I need to tweak the gate on them. But yeah, the big boys, obviously Azure, AWS, G Cloud, are hoovering up the market because they can offer more at scale, and they can offer better at scale. And it might not necessarily be cheaper, but if you use them correctly, and this is always the other argument, yes, you can host on-prem, you can build an on-prem environment for less over 3 years. But if you can do that, you have also either probably over provisioned your on-prem environment, and you obviously haven't factored in the additional costings to provide an equivalent service. So yeah, there we go. Oh, that seems to have satisfied it. So yes, there are many aspects to this, and there's many things that will be driving Rackspace to very potentially fold. We've lost. Who did we lose? We lost one of the cloud a cloud providers. Not Bing. Anything but Bing. Who was it? Pretty sure. Computer. We lost one over here, and I can't remember who it was. UK Cloud. That's the one. UK Cloud again, another provider, and the problem is UK Cloud provided. They don't provide anymore. They provided public sector cloud, so they provided services to the UK government and things like that, and they went pop. because again, they cannot compete. They are trying to hold a wide range of services in an environment where it just doesn't work anymore. If you haven't got the front end, and if you haven't got the manageability and the flexibility there anymore, it's not going to last. You can, I mean, to all intents and purposes, from here, I could fire up a VPS provider. I've got enough servers to do it. I could quite easily spin up enough servers and do it. In fact, one of the videos I'm going to do in the future is going to be just setting up some gaming servers and getting them available publicly. So yeah, anyone who's got a request for a gaming for some dedicated servers that you think would be fun to get set up, again, it's that sort of thing. We'll get them set up, we'll get them working, and exposed and publicly facing, because not that difficult to do anymore. So yeah, you're in an environment now where the world has moved on, and you either move with it or you get left behind. That's other things. Moons ago, and I've said this before, I was told of a security person at a company that I used to be in contracted at. And the quote was, "Cloud is just a fad. Everything will be back on prem within 5 years." That was 5 years ago. The only people pulling stuff back on prem are the people who've used cloud wrong or have a specific use case that the cloud cannot meet. And the other one is that always gets banded about, and I see it on t-shirts, and again, it makes me chuckle, is cloud is just somebody else's computer. And while fundamentally that is right, the easiest comparison I can make for cloud versus on-prem would be the railways. On-prem is the equivalent to having a garden railway. Well, a big garden railway, but a garden railway. You can do the stuff that the big boys do, but you can't do it as well. You can put trains going around a railway, you can operate the signals, you run a timetable, but you can never do it with the same scale, same flexibility, the same availability that the big boys do. That's the simplest way I have of explaining the difference between on-prem and cloud. And even if you're running, say, by cloud, I mean public cloud infrastructure, Azure's, AWS's. Run a private cloud, fine. You could run private cloud with, well, you can partially run a private cloud with Azure. You can use what else? Or HCI, what's it called? Azure on-prem. What have they rebadged it? Azure Stack. Um, so you can run a degree of private cloud, and obviously you can do edge computing with Azure Stack, which is something, again, I like to play around with. I've got the servers that should be able to do it. But at the same time, you're having to leverage public cloud to get the feature set. You can run private cloud. You could build a private cloud with VMware, then XCP, even with Hyper-V. You can do it. You can build a private cloud, and you can put features into it. So you can build the feature sets that you want, but they'll never be as flexible or as available, and to a certain degree, and as robust as the public cloud offers. But it all comes down to making sure that the use case is correct. Don't use it correctly, and if you don't apply the right licenses, permissions, then it'll either cost you a lot more, or you'll do something wrong and you'll end up with public data. So there are many reasons pro and for on-prem. There are many reasons pro and for and against. for and against cloud. But you can't just write one of them. And that is what I see a lot of people doing is they say, I'd never use cloud. Or on the flip side, you get people that are only cloud. And you have to sit in the middle. You have to be able to operate a hybrid workspace, the way the world is. You will need to be able to operate in an environment where some of the on-prem services are required. We've got clients that are like that, where we can't get rid of on-prem servers because they have applications that require local access to servers, local SQL servers, things like that. You could migrate them into a VM in the cloud, which is great, but then you add in latency and complexity, and you have to start using desktops and applications, which don't always work well with some applications. As much as there's a sort of a push over to that, things like Microsoft 365 or Windows 365, but that is one of the issues. You do have to be aware. The important thing to consider is the use case. Use case for certain pieces of hardware, the use case for certain pieces of software. It's all critical, it's all required, and it's why there is no one generic answer. Just put that in. It's why when I see someone saying that they don't use X product, they only ever use Y product. If you don't use X product, but you only ever use Y product, then what is product Y able to do that product X cannot? And what about the features that product X can do that product Y cannot, that you're not aware of because you haven't used it? Lots of people don't use things like unified security gateways as a USG Pro 4. Yeah. We do, because they serve a very simple purpose. Same reason why we use Dream Machines, UDRs, all things like that. They have a purpose. They have a use case. They fit a certain requirement. I would not throw a Sophos or a PF Sense, insert your favorite flavor of firewall here, into a home user. I would not throw them into a small business that doesn't need web filtering, things like that, because they're just not needed. You're throwing it in because it's your preferred management firewall and you're charging and the customer's happy to pay. Fine. But if you are just putting in a basic firewall and you're managing a lot in a mixed environment from the edge and you're dealing with it in different ways, they work perfectly. The hotels, they work perfectly. There's no push. Again, they like it because there's no management fees on it, so to speak. There's a charge to look after networks, but there's no yearly replacement. Oh, you need to buy another license. Oh, it's going to cost you even more than last year. If you want to do any form of web filtering now, you can't filter unless you can deploy a certificate, because most services now use TLS. If you're browsing the web now, most of it is over HTTPS. Applications all should be, if you're communicating over the internet, all be using TLS. So the only thing that the edge can do now is filter by DNS. But if the application is, say, able to request DNS over HTTPS, what's it going to do? Oh, it can block it. Then all you get are complaints from users. Why are you blocking this? Why are you blocking that? Why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? If you're dealing with public network, public environment, the second you start locking it down to a crazy degree, your support lines fill up with people going, I've connected to your network and it doesn't work. Or I can't access XYZ VPN. Or they'll just fire up a VPN and connect over port 443 and just negate anything you put in. So it's one of the things that you do always have to be aware of. There are ways that work and there are ways that generate a lot of support. And the last thing you want is harassing, hey, if you're business members of staff for things that aren't working, bells, etc. You don't need the night porter harassed by someone because they can't connect to they can't connect to the watch them basically, or they can't connect to their VPN to do some work, or they can't connect to their VPN to watch some porn. those are the ones. If you've never had a ticket for make the porn work, then you need a bit longer in IT. I've had one. I've had many. So yes, there are use cases that have to be dealt with. So, what else has happened this week in IT? Oh, honestly, I'm trying to think. There are some other things, and I've completely forgotten them. I forgot to write them down. Just been one. Um, a perfect use, perfect issue actually, perfect sub. Um, that is starting to. I'm pretty sure it's starting to grate on uh the content creators online who do a lot of Ubiquiti Unify stuff. Obviously, I do try and cover it as well. Ubiquiti's early access program. The joys of early access. Now, for example, if that there is a G5 bullet. That camera is in early access. I can't talk about that camera, you guys, because that breaks the EA rule. I can't tell you anything about that camera that I like or dislike. So my feedback would be on Ubiquiti's community, and then it would just be a case of them ignoring. I can't tell you anything about it other than there it is. Now, the problem being is there is so much out in EA now, and there's been stuff out in EA for months and months and months. I'm streaming this as well as going through my Sophos firewalls. I'm streaming this through a Ubiquiti Dreamwall, which I can't really tell you about. It's working, yes. Is it perfect? No. Does it need some revisions? Yes. But I can't tell you what I like, what I don't like, because that breaks the rules. So it's very frustrating. I mean, I'm a small enough channel that I will fly under the radar. I mean, I could probably get away with doing a full review of that. I could do a full review of the AI Theta, which I have down here. And that's the camera for the AI Theta. For it, I could do a full review on that and probably get away with it. I won't, because that's unfair. It's unfair to the other content creators who like Cody at Mac Telecom, who does great content on, and I wouldn't do that. But what you should be able to do when it comes out in EA is you should be able to put forward a constructive criticism Ubiquiti can deal with. And obviously the caveat around that is this is early access and it will probably change before launch. The Dream Wall should be changed before launch, in my opinion. I can't tell you really why, but it should not be released in its current form. Dreamwall Pro has been hinted at for so long, but it's coming up now. By me, I'm trying to think. It's probably coming up over 6 months since I bought my Dreamwall. I can't review it. Can't do a video on it. I've done some little bits that I can get away with because it's the same as what's on the the Dream Machines and Dream Machine SE and things like that. But it's frustrating that we cannot provide a video feedback to say this is what we like, this is what we don't like. The other issue being EA program was for early access adopters trial kit. And what I'm seeing more and more of again is people selling the kit to clients. I've seen people out there, obviously in the UK, we don't get Connect, we don't get Talk. I think they're coming, but not yet. So Unified Connect is the screens and things that link in, so they all link into to Protect and everything. But we don't get that. We haven't had that yet. But I'm seeing people in the US selling it to clients and asking to get more of it because they've been to clients and fitted it, without actually thinking, well, what if Ubiquiti suddenly decide to pull it from the market? What are they going to do then? They've sold a product line into a client without that. And I think Ubiquiti need to basically sit there and state in big letters whether they do something for, rather than just putting a sticker on it that says this is an EA product, actually make it something different. Put early access, print early access onto it needed. Not for resale, because that's all that's happening at the moment. People are selling EA kit and then moaning about it that it doesn't work properly. The reason it doesn't work properly is because it's in early access and needs some revisions, needs hardware revisions or some software revisions. So, but they've made the early access program available to everybody. Everybody is in EA now, but nobody can talk about it. So it's stupid. It's Ubiquiti have turned what should have been a program to get better hardware into a, oh, you just get the same hardware just a bit earlier. It's that sort of thing. They, as much as it's great that they've managed to come out with revisions of stuff, like we've got the U6 Lite Plus, the U6 LR Plus, which again they've taken the U6 Lite, they've made it better, they've speed, throughput, etc. Great, and they, unlike just back to that, but yeah, they've made a better product and they want to test it. Great, so test it, but stop opening up the EA program so that every Tom, Dick, and Harry can buy it, and then they stick it on eBay and try and scalp it. We cannot get at the moment USGs. There is no replacement new for the USG. The UXG is just too expensive. A £500 plus router to replace an £80 router, and we don't need that. We need a USG 3 replacement that is £100, whatever that is in dollars, or your preferred currency. We need a replacement for the USG. We need it to compact. We need it with the option to be rack mounted. Would be good. So make it rack mountable, but don't make it a rack mount product. It doesn't fit everything. The current range of being able to wall mount and lock onto a wall is perfect, but we don't want a UDR because it's not powerful enough. We need something that can throughput at a gig, because in the UK a gig is generally the fastest speed. Most people don't have more than a gig. Most people in the UK are under 100 meg for their broadband. So the USG 3 is still just about code. But that's changing. Demographic is changing. It needs to go up. We need something that could do a gig, maybe 500 meg with all the features turned on, as a managed router. Within the higher up there, have a quick look at the store, because there's already products in there that would make a perfect replacement for a USG 3. Oh, I need a new mouse as well. My mouse button's not working properly. Awesome. My mouse going. I can't click and hold. And there we go. You have to press harder. Right. this is it. We can provide 1 gig. As a, but we do not deal with residential. We I made a conscious decision 10 years ago to say the only residential customers I will support is residential customers off of a business, so the company owners, and people like that. But for businesses, we can provide, as long as there is fiber optic in the area from Openreach, we can provide a gig. I'm running on a gig here provided by ourselves. It's not that expensive anymore. There are many small local fiber optic companies running fiber now. Oh, you're welcome, Richard. I'll try and be a bit different to most people, where they try and say, "Oh, isn't this fantastic?" No, it's shit. Basically, I will be very, very verbal in my opinion on something. If something is crap, I'll state that it's crap. If something is good, I'll praise it. But yeah, I'm working New Year's Eve. I'm working New Year's Eve in London. I will try my best to get some footage of it. But I will probably not be able to post until after New Year's Eve, if that kind of gives you a hint as to where I'm working in London. So I will be able to post some footage once it's all over. I will do my best to keep some social media active on those days, with what's going on. But yes, one of our clients is up there, and I am up there providing support. So it's going to be a fun New Year's Eve. It's the second time I've done it. Oh. So that should be interesting. He says. My stream is still a bit choppy. Do need to get my internet, because this is, as I say, I'm on a dream wall, and it's not perfect. I've noticed this is one of the most recent firmware changes. It causes some weirdness. So yeah, frustrating. But yes, what I was going to do was quickly hop over to here onto the Ubiquiti store. So if we look in their ISP operator stuff, the UISP router, this needs to be turned into a Unify router. That is perfect. That for small business is perfect. That is what we need from Ubiquiti in the Unify side. You need a nice, simple, zoom in on it. So we've got a PoE switch and an SFP port. Now all we want is one of those ports to be a WAN port and an SFP. That, if Ubiquiti could turn that product into a unified product with a managed switch and a router on it, perfect. Perfect replacement for the USG3, not too big, can be stuck on a wall. Ideal. It's not, I mean, if you work out, that's got an 8 gig switch in it. That's the size of a normal 8 gig switch, so it's only about that big. That I can fit in business, no problem. That will sell out the door 1,000 at a time, no problem, because it's that sort of thing. But this is what Ubiquiti need to present us, not tiny weeny little cameras. If they can do that and get that so it can be centrally managed, perfect. Say the UISP stuff is rolling out the door at the moment, but we don't want that. We want Unify kit to match the rest of the network. Say the old Edge gear is just getting, to a certain degree, too long in the tooth. Somewhere here, behind me actually. I mean, that is an Edge Router X, and they are brilliant little boxes. But again, they're just too old. They are too old and too out of date now. They make good basic routers, but the hardware in that isn't much different from a USG3. And as soon as you put any of the security ticks on it, it can't cope. So these are the sort of things that they need to consider. Give us a router. Give us a router like that, even at 200 quid. That's manageable. It's better than £500 for routing offload. So here's the UXG Pro that's sold out, and that's the other, obviously still is, but can't fit this in most business. They don't want anything like that. They don't have racks. They have a very small cupboard somewhere, and putting that in and putting the noise that goes with it is just not ideal. Here and there, have 1 gig home internet if they want. Yeah, I mean the UK is dragging its heels still. It's very much. We've just had a client that they're moving. Effectively, the business is being split, so they're moving into a different building. We took over the broadband line in there, and it's not broadband. It was literally less than a meg. But the quote was, from what we got on fed back from our system, was that the line could support 20 meg. It can't. So yeah, 2 kilometers, 2.5 kilometers, so 2 miles up the road. The entire village there is fiber optic. They've run fiber to the home. So we have asked that they could do it. Yeah, well, that was it. It was the decision to stick with copper. Decision to stick with copper was a terrible decision. If we'd gone fiber optic, then it would have made it so much easier. The big irony is, if we'd gone fiber optic back in Thatcher's era, number one, it would have actually, the stupid thing is, it would have reduced theft because people wouldn't have been out nicking copper. So there'd be less. We would probably be looking at 10 gig home connections by now. It would have boosted the uptake of and the speed uptake of video conferencing massively. I've been installing video conferencing kit now for, I think what the first kit I ever did was, I think the first kit I ever did was a Polycom kit, and it was awful. That's the only word I can do. It was horrendous. But I mean, Teams, well, Skype for Business, Skype, obviously, Skype Room Systems, doing for a very long time. And obviously now Teams Rooms. But obviously, if you had, I mean, video conferencing where you would bond a pair of ISDN lines. That was the only way you could get the throughput. That was it. But yeah, video conferencing, obviously, it came into its own with the lockdown. But we were prepping companies for that years before. We'd already told companies they need to move to this system because of the big, obviously, have to have sort of been a bit blind to not see it. The big push for going green. And when you're dealing with international companies, like, well, why are you flying 3 people over for a meeting for a day? Just put video conferencing kit in and it will pay for itself in a year in saved flight costs. And they sort of look at you like, well, what do you mean? It's like, well, how much does it cost to fly 3 people from Germany to England and back again 4 times a year? Oh, it costs X £1,000 a year. Right. Well, a video conferencing kit costs, say, twice that. But the difference is you can now have a video conferencing meeting once a week, or even more than that if you need. And they look at you with like, okay, tell me more. And so you kit rooms out correctly for it. You don't try and, there are companies out there that will stick a laptop in a room with a webcam on a TV. Say that's a video conferencing suite. No, you put in a proper system that can be booked and can be configured, and then you train people how to use it. And before you know it, the room is booked Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. And you can't actually use the room that you've installed for when you need to use it because people love them. So the next step on was making sure broadband speed. But yeah, if we'd gone fiber optic, this country technologically wise would be in a far greater position. The issue would then have been that to go, say for example, to go 10 gig internally, to actually be able to benefit from the faster internet, there's still a big latency on that. There's still thousands and thousands and thousands of buildings that are cabled in the UK in Cat 5, not Cat 5e, Cat 5. Now the maximum speed on Cat 5 is technically over short distances is gigabit, but that's it. You can't go any faster than that. So to rebuild those into Cat 6 is cost prohibitive. The launch of 2.5 gig and 5 gig Ethernet that can be run on Cat 5e obviously is an advantage, but then it means ripping out switch infrastructure and replacing, which companies don't like doing. Unless they have to, unless there's a genuine reason. So yeah, there's a lot of steps that would have had to, even now, would still not have been done. Yeah, this Cat 5e. I mean, it's only now that Cat 5e is disappearing because people are the manufacturers. Obviously, the demand has dropped. Manufacturers are stopping producing modules. Manufacturers are stopping producing Cat 5e cable in bulk quantity, so the cost is going up. Versus Cat 6. In my shed, I've got drums of Cat 6. We only cable in Cat 6 because we're cabling now for the next 10 years, not to keep the status quo. It's an issue that over the next 5 years, I don't think it's not going to be an issue. Most homes don't need more. There is still this fad going around, and I'm going to call it a fad, of this big, I must have 10 gig at home, when 99% of the time, most people aren't saturating it. If you have a just reason for 10 gig, fine. I mean, I could do with 10 gig in certain aspects of this because throwing videos around, throwing large ISOs around, it makes it a bit quicker. But it's the difference with me between 2 minutes and 5 minutes. And I'm not dealing with 4K footage. I'm not dealing with massive files. I'm not throwing that volume of data around at the moment. So I'm quite happy at a gig. Same with businesses now. Most of what they're doing is, if they're having to throw that volume of data around the business, then you focus on people that need that. So if you're dealing with, say, a design department, they might have a genuine need for 10 gig, especially if they're dealing with lots and lots of multi-gig files. So you either look at what they're using and say, right, how can we make it better? How can we speed? You can, to a certain degree, obviously localize a certain aspect of it, or you effectively make them be remote, so you can leverage remote computing in a central environment where you've got a 10 gig backbone, or 40, 25 gig, 40 gig, X, whatever gig backbone. But some of it is always comes down to often down to a time cost analysis. So if you are demanding 10 gig, yet you're still running spinning disks on your arrays, not really worth it unless you have a huge array, in which case you would probably be better spending the time migrating to flash storage or decent flash cache, that array, and getting the infrastructure maybe up to 2.5 gig, possibly 5 gig. But again, it's always a balancing act. Got sat down in a box there. That's a 48 port Pro. Yeah, Unify switch. That I've got here for testing because I want to play with the layer 3 aspect of it. Again, that's another. There's a lot of people asking for that for home, and you're like, you don't need layer 3 switching. And if you are offloading your routing to a switch from a router, then you're really doing something obscure for a home to require that. Big business, yes, if you want to offload VLAN switching, but then that's okay for home use. But in a business, if you can't put an ACL on the layer 3 switching, which I need to have a look at, I don't know if you can or you can't. There's no firewall on the layer 3 router there, then it's not actually worth doing, really, unless you don't need the firewall. Yes, there's interesting and obscure reasons for stuff. The next couple of years, I can see what the big push now will be in efficiency. And this is ironic because it's come full circle. I don't know if I've still got one here. It's a shame Jason's not in the comments because he'd love this. I had running a network at home many moons ago, a D-Link switch with what they classed as green Ethernet. And it was there. We can save literally small amount of power by not using the full power requirements to run network link. So they would drop the voltage effectively on your network link. Because obviously when you plug into a switch, it's outputting enough of a signal, or the signal volume, to broadcast that signal over the 120, 200 meters of that cable. The cable is 0.5 meter long. It doesn't need to output that signal volume. What it would effectively do is attenuate the signal down so that it wasn't using as much power. And that was over 10 years ago, that sort of thing coming around. And I've seen it in switches. You have the option for green Ethernet. And more often than not, it broke stuff. You turn it on and stuff stopped working because they wouldn't know how long the cable was, and the kit the other end wouldn't like it, and it caused chaos. But that is the big push. That will be the big thing for business. Hence the big push with ARM CPUs. Power efficiency, being able to, it will not surprise me if before long you start to see server CPU coming out with efficiency cores. Something that I haven't done a thing on it yet. I will do I haven't done a little tech talk on it. There is a big thing at the moment where there's a lot of slating going on of Intel and Apple, because obviously they're advertising, like, if you buy an M1, M2 MacBook, Mac Mini, it comes with an 8-core CPU. It does. It comes with an 8-core CPU. 4 performance cores, 4 efficiency. And the argument is, well, that's not a true 8-core CPU. Well, yes, it is. It's an 8-core CPU that runs performance mode or efficiency mode, or a mix of both, depending on the requirement. But what its focus is be efficient when it needs to be, fast when it needs to be. No, it's not as fast as if it was 8 performance cores, But then having 8 performance cores would mean it would use more power when it's not needed, which then costs money. So, yes, it's Intel have done the same. Obviously, the latest generation Intel chips, and I won't class myself as an Intel fanboy, but nothing in this loft. No, I lie. There's 2 AMD chips in this loft, and they're both in one of those yellow bins. So yes, that's my stance on AMD Intel currently. If you're an AMD boy or girl, fine. I've spec'd AMD system, lied AMD system, but long term I use Intel because I know in 10 years' time, it's loft in 10 years' time, everything that's Intel in this loft in 10 years' time will still be working. The problem with the AMD stuff is not the chip that would fail, it's everything around it. Yeah, that's it. Every it's not the make, it's the association around it. Everything Intel that I've ever built, ever used, has always been more stable. Not saying it's perfectly stable, I won't claim that. Long term, Intel is always more stable. The architecture around it, so the chipsets and everything around it, is always more because they don't cut costs. AMD has always been price performance point has always been better really than Intel, with a few exceptions. But that's normally because you end up with something that is either not ready when it launches, or needs drivers settling. And if, again, people feel free to comment on this. Someone who's been building PCs for 5+ years. I've built AMD machines. The last AMD machine I built myself for myself was an Athlon 64. And it was a very frustrating machine. Now I know obviously since then there's been a lot of changes. No, tell a lie, I built a Sempron and that was a mic. But for myself was an Athlon. I have looked after machines for people that are AMD, and every single time the AMD machine had more trouble than the equivalent Intel. Laptops, especially when AMD introduced the AP, they were horrendous. People loved them because they were cheap. That was it. They were nightmares to look after, and they lasted 2 years and a day, and then for some reason they'd just be slow, or they'd be slow anyway because they'd been oversold, or they were under-spec'd because they were cheap. The AMD APU, the A4, the A6, the A8 range, horrendous to deal with. So that was it. The Zen series is good, but it's like the group that I game with. So if you do follow me on Twitch, group that I game with, we have a mix of AMD and Intel users, and it's always it's always the AMD users have these bizarre quirks. The USB doesn't work on my motherboard. We're waiting for a BIOS patch for it. My CPU is running at 78 degrees, and then suddenly you start playing the game and the temperature comes down. It's like it was on the main menu and it's doing nothing at 70. I can't. I'm going to upgrade it. I mean, full kudos to AMD for keeping the chip, for keeping the pin out the same. Many generations did, but then they made it a nightmare to BIOS patch it. So everyone went out, bought these new chips, stuck them in their boards, and then the the support forums are filled up with people going, I've changed my CPU and now my computer doesn't turn on. Did you update the BIOS? No. Go and update the BIOS with the old chip back in, and then take the chip out, pray to the IT gods, put the new chip in, turn it on again, and if you're really lucky, it'll boot. If you're unlucky, you've killed your motherboard. So, yes, there are pros and cons, both sides. I'm hunting at the moment for an Epic server, just to get my hands on one to play with. But again, everything I've seen, there's always this push from a lot of content creators. Obviously, they're trying to do good, but it's the real world that I'm more focused on. It's an AMD Epic system is good, fantastic, but is the system around it good? We primarily use Dell. Dell, 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 Dell everywhere here. I've got a couple of HPs that you're on right now, but the main focus is Dell. The last Opteron Dells 715s, and they just never worked well. All the Opteron never worked well. That's exactly it. The AMD board, you can either support the 3000 series or the 5000 series, but you can't support both because the BIOS isn't big enough. So for the sake of 50p a board, they nerfed the board so you could only support either or effectively, because they didn't forward plan. They didn't make the BIOS memory size large enough to deal with the ROM that it would need to support both sets. It's kind of like it would be like my machine not only being able to support Xeon V3s or Xeon V4s. I'd have to change the BIOS for each. And that's something that, I mean, gone are the days when BIOS updating used to be a pray to the gods and hope it lasted and hope it worked. That's long gone. BIOS update all day, every day. It's part of Windows Update. Anyone who posts the old meme of you've never seen anything more scary than doing a BIOS update is either very new into IT and very green, or has listened way too many people have either got fake horror stories, have had the one time in a million where it work. BIOS updates are going on all day, every day. Do a Windows update now for a Dell laptop twice a year. Generally, you'll get a BIOS update or a management firmware update. Something will update. Part of the course now. It's nice and easy. Gone are the days of booting onto a floppy disk with a BIOS file, having to manually type it in, and you have to include the right switches on the AMI BIOS flash updater that made sure that is so you had to make sure that it backed up the old BIOS, wiped it clean, wrote the new BIOS in, and reset it. Yeah, I mean, I remember dual BIOS launching. When I first started at an IT company, so we were still getting computers in on April the 26th, I think. 6th? Possibly 20th. Basically, every year we knew we would get at least one computer in with the Chernobyl virus. This was years after it had gone out, but we would get one computer in at least every year with a fried motherboard that had been wiped by the Chernobyl virus for years after. Because it was at that time where you could actually start to wipe BIOSes. Without fail, we'd get one in every and it would just be a waiting game around that time. It'd take a day or two normally before someone realised. And then I think it was Gigabyte BIOS, one of their ones, because their argument was, well, starting to become more of a thing because finding faults with BIOSes, and people are, and we used to get it. I mean, the company I was at used to use BIC motherboards, First International motherboards, and they had some good boards and they had some bad boards. Um, Good boards were all Intel chipset, so the good old 440BX chipset. The bad boards had VIA chipset. They were a pissing nightmare. They were so fussy. The Intel boards, you could slot chips into them, you could slot memory into them. They would just work. VIA boards, you'd slot a CPU into it, slot memory into it, and if it mismatched something that it didn't like, it would crash. Blue screens all over the bloody place. I isolated it down at one point to, if you had, and this is going back a little. So if you were dealing with Pentium 3s, and they would be slot 1 Pentium 3, Pentium 2s. So if the front side bus was 100 megahertz and the memory was 133 megahertz front side bus memory, it would crash. But it said it supported it. It said it was a fully supported configuration. Couldn't do it, it would crash. But 100 meg on 100 meg worked perfectly. 133, 133 worked perfectly. If you put the exact same setup into a VX based board, solid, didn't give a shit, worked perfectly. And that was the chipset. And this again, so we would start to get BIOS updates. So the first thing we'd do, build a machine, stick the floppy disk in, update the BIOS, boot on the, do it that way, and that would get fix most of the issues. I mean, this was Google. They were VB1. There they were. There it is. Those are the motherboards I used to like installing because they just worked. So supported Pentium 3, 450 to 600, 100 meg frontside bus, and they did I'm sure they did a later. But that was the era where I was installing. I was building machines before then, but that was the era where I was mass building machines. So it's one of those things. In my time, yes, I have built hundreds and because we building machines day in day out. That's where I cut my IT work. Building machines, supporting machines, installing and going on site, which is a great grounding to get you up and running in IT. I don't think you do it as much. Really wouldn't. You bulk. I mean, we buy machines pre-built from Dell because there's no money in building. If you are building machines for clients, they either have to be something very, very special, or you're charging your clients too much money. It's the basics of it. So if you are building custom machines for your clients every time they want a new machine, just for a basic workstation, then you should be serving your clients better by standardizing the machines with bells. But yeah, there's the BIOS on that one. And I have to say, I think we might have had one or two when we did BIOS updates that screwed up. But those were the days of, yeah, hold on to your butt when you did a BIOS update, because if you had a power cut, you were fucked. That was it. The board was dead. If you had an issue and it decided that there was a hiccup or you had a dodgy stick of memory, you're fucked. That's it. The board's fucked. So those days are quite happily behind us. But yeah, Gigabyte back then. Let's see. Pocket 370 maybe. Tiny picture. But yeah, Gigabyte. I'm pretty sure it was them started with the dual BIOS. Okay, fine. Oh, there's a chipset you never wanted to see, was an Ali Aladdin. Or I did have a machine with a Sys 5591 and a 530. They were okay. They weren't as flaky as Via. Give them that. Alexa, be it, I think. That was there we go. Included dual BIOS. Get a better picture of that one. There they are. That was the era of the Gigabyte dual BIOS, where if you had a problem, you had a duff flash, you could change a switch, boot off the second BIOS, and restore the old BIOS back, and then boot back off the original BIOS. What we got? We've got AGP, PCI, and we've got, is that an AMR? Might be an AMR slot. Like India. Chipset, memory expansion. Yeah, there you go. AMR, audio modemerizer. That was it. You could have you had the CPU support for 140. So yeah, this was where they started to get more boards available for overclocking. So you could, obviously you have 100 and a 133, which are the supported bus speeds, and then they added 140 and 150 because this was where you started to push the front side bus speed up easily to overclock. And it was also when they started to move, or they'd already started by this point, they were moving the overclocking settings into BIOS. So again, on somewhere, Domots shout. I mean, I would love to get hold of one. This was probably one of my most favorite boards, and yes, it had a VIA chipset. It didn't have a choice, but this was a dual Pentium 3 machine. I had one of these brand new. I had it ordered in. It's the only one I ever ordered, and it's the only one I ever saw. Because someone brought in once a BP6, which was the dual Celeron version of it. And prior to this, I had a dual Pentium 3 500 slot one, and then I ordered this board, and I ordered two P3 700s, and I managed to overclock them a little bit. I think I got them to 733, which wasn't massive, but again, early days, trying to get two Pentium 3s cool in a system, running Windows 2000, because obviously 98 didn't support it, and XP wasn't around yet, and NT had no plug and play. I had that with probably a very early Reva TNT2 or something. Can't remember, but I'd love to get another one. And the problem with them is I'd want one that someone's already done all the recapping because they had the dodgy caps on. That, even if I had it just sat on a shelf somewhere, it'd just be fun. It had, in fact, it had everything. It had RAID on, so I had a RAID 0 array back then as well, with probably would have been Western Digital. I think we had some 7200 RPM Western Digital. Ironically, my predecessor to that had SCSI hard disks. So and that was difficult enough. They were flipping expensive. In fact, I think I got my SCSI hard disks. A lot of hard disks at the time, people didn't realize had lifetime warranties on them, and they used to come in and be pulled out of servers and be stuffed in the corner. So I went through one night or one evening, can I have all the dead disks? And they went, yeah. This was before the era of wiping and data destruction and all that became the norm. I liberated all the disks that were in warranty, sent them all off, and I was getting discs back for weeks, brand or refurbished, brand new discs, all under warranty to me. It was great. So I ended up with loads and loads of really fast, really new hard disks. Ultra DMA 66/100, yeah. RAID 0/1 technology. And actually, I wish, of all things, that this, yeah. I then moved on to DFI with the LAN party range. Yeah, Victor's got one. I'm very jealous. He's got some really nice retro stuff. Yeah, I've commented on a couple of his videos. It's like, I want that. I want that board. But it's a shame it's a shame that he's not UK based. I have sat down to the side of me I think it might be a early P4 Xeon IBM server that I'm sure he'd love to have. But I moved on to DFI. But I had that exact motherboard, the Enforce 4 SLID, and it was brilliant and absolutely horrendous at the same time. If anyone here has ever had the experience of the Enforce chipset, they'll know what I mean. It was the most randomly unstable, flaky hell of a machine that you could do, but when it worked, it was beautiful. I had a pair of 6600 GeForce 6600s in it in SLI. That was when SLI was a viable thing. You had the first, this was PCIe, I think Gen 1, and you had the two you can see here, this was before they'd even standardized on what the slots did. So you had PCIe 1, PCIe 4, obviously PCIe 16. You had to manually move jumpers to enable SLI, and you actually got a pair of pliers with it to do that. It had two network ports. It glowed in the dark because it was UV. It had SATA on it. When was this review from? 2005. Yeah, that would have been when I got mine. Yeah, it was an interestingly fun motherboard. I'm sure I had another in fact I did. I had one after that, which was my one and only personal AMD build. So I replaced it with another DFI board. But you can see, mine was a Pentium. That one that I had a Pentium 4. Remember, I'm pretty sure I had a P4 in it. No, that would have been my AMD Athlon one. So Athlon 64, that was what I built into that one, and it was brilliant and horrendous. And that was that summarized AMD at the time. Great chip, horrendous chipsets around it. But yeah, there was that, and I'm sure. Let me find out. There was another one that I got after that. I've got to find it. No, after that I switched back to. I had that, then I switched from that back to. I switched to my Asus ROG. That lasted me for 4 years, 2009. Then I built a new machine when I moved house. And I went back to Intel. I went to Core i7 950s. And I stayed with Nvidia actually. But yeah, that it's one of, again, I wish I'd kept the board, but at the time they weren't nobody wanted them. They weren't, there wasn't the retro scene that existed. Wasn't that one. That one might have been that one. 0875, yeah. That was it. It had Ray, it had a Ray, that's it. That's the other one I had. That was its predecessor. And that had I had a Pentium 4 in that. And if I stayed with Intel, which I should have done, should have switched to Core 2s, it would have been better. But you don't get this anymore. Everything now is white, black, clinical and clean. You don't get the craziness. One of the manufacturers needs to bring this silliness back. That's what's really missing. So it was good fun, and it was a fun time. I mean, literally, you got this. You got all the UV slimline cables. You got stickers, and you got the PC carryall. So it allowed you to literally lift up and carry your PC case to your LAN party. So yeah, we used to run them occasionally. We'd go take our machines down to a local LAN cafe that I was helping to run, not run. I was helping to look after the IT at group of us. And yeah, things like that are sadly missing days. Gone are those days, unfortunately, because broadband came along. There is, I mean, we're lucky down here, down the road. There's a new LAN cafe slash games cafe just opened up. They're called Game on Cornwall. If you are a D&D fan, if you are a fan of any card game, board game, gaming, and you are in Cornwall and you're looking for somewhere to get together with a group of friends, cafe, they've got a little shop, they've got all sorts tucked away down there. They've got 6 machines that you can rent time on, new build machines, consoles. They have their very important gamers lounge. They have a rentable lockable that you can start playing game. You can run a campaign in that you can rent time in. So, and they even do rentable DMs and GMs, so games masters and dungeon masters. Really nice crowd. So if you are looking for somewhere and you're in Cornwall, that's worth going. Next year they are planning on opening it up as a hotel as well, so you can go and stay there. And obviously, ideal if you're a group of people that want to get away somewhere and have a few days away, but be able to enjoy yourself, give them a look. Game on Cornwall, really nice group down and set up. But yes, that era of gaming, I don't think it will come back. As much as it is fun to try and do it, I think it's past, which is a sad shame. But the world moves on. We have broadband, we have Discord. We can do the same thing as I do most evenings. If you look me up on Twitch, I'm there as well. And we can have a good laugh and play games. And I'm trying to, as I say, one of the things I'm trying to do is some of the old retros back up and running. So over the next couple of weeks, as I get time available, as things come down, I'll be probably do a live stream of it as well, getting a game server up and running that people join in on. So if you've got any games that you'd like to join in on, I've already got a Minecraft server running. I don't know if it's still up or not. I haven't checked in the last couple of days. But that's minecraft.jimtheitguy.com. That's a hardcore vanilla server, so be aware. It's not really, it's there more as a test than anything else. But if you play Minecraft and fancy trying to see how long you can survive on there for, I would be interested to see. But yes, I think I've waffled on long enough now. We're nearly at 2 hours. So there we go. Some IT waffle, some Rackspace news. as things calm down, if you do follow me, I will try and do some shorts over Christmas to New Year. New Year, as I said, I'm in London. I can't tell you what I'm doing, but if you're in the UK and you know what goes on in London on New Year, that's where I will be. And I will try and stream slash do what I can within the bounds of what I'm allowed to do and present, obviously prior to New Year. After New Year, you'll get a flood probably stuff that I've done because where I was having fun. So yeah, I'm going to wrap this up now. Thank you for watching. Thank you for joining me, all of you. Oh, in Spain, well, watch it on TV. Watch us on TV. That's all I'll say. Yeah. Have a great rest of the day. I'm now going to go out. Well, I'm going to go get to eat and wait for it to get dark, and then go and look at the glorious Christmas lights we've got down here. If anyone ever ventures into Cornwall for Christmas and New Year, some of the Christmas light displays on down here are phenomenal. So there we go. Right. Here's all. Till next time.